Saturday morning, time to kick off the Experts Program. And Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, on the line with us. Good morning, Luis.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Are you guys going to come down to Salinas today for the wine festival?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We have a company event that we're doing, a little morning thing with our team at the company. But then afterwards, we're heading over there.
Very good. I'll see you down there. We will be on, the 100 block of Main. I think we're in front of the First Awakenings restaurant.
I will stop by and say hello.
Sounds great. So 5G is back in the news. I know a lot of folks are waiting for the rollout of it, and they'd like to have 5G service here in Monterey County. But there was a court ruling affecting the deregulation of 5G. And actually, I guess it would be the FCC attempting to preempt local, planning regulations, right, and review. And so what's happening with that?
Well, the FCC passed some rules recently that basically said that the opponents of 5G couldn't use the National Historic Preservation Act, which is something that's very broadly used by advocates to prevent development or modernization in many areas, or the National Environmental Policy Act to prevent small cell sites from being built. Basically, they said that the 5G sites were so critical to the country that federal law would trump local law, plus these two particular pieces of legislation, these two acts, couldn't pertain to when it came to 5G cell sites. So in effect, what they were trying to do is an end around against groups that would use those regulations against letting cell towers be, 5G cell towers be built quickly. Fortunately for the FCC, a panel of federal judges ruled against them, saying basically that, you can't control this federal law. You can't, just because it's 5G, you can't make it supersede these two particular acts, and that essentially if somebody wants to protest or wants to call on this legislation to prevent 5G sites, or at least go into litigation against 5G sites, that they can do so. So it was a ruling against the FCC, and for a lot of carriers who are, as we've talked about in the past, fighting local NIMBY, not in my backyard activists who are advocating against cell sites, they wanted to use the FCC's ruling as a way to kind of fast track the construction of those cell sites.
Right.
And, quite frankly, this has become a local issue because AT&T is really focused on rolling out their 5G network in competition with Sprint and with Verizon, and they're getting ready to go before the city council in Salinas next week to get permission essentially to be able to roll out their 5G small cell sites within the city limit. And already city council has received a number of letters and other advocacy from people on the peninsula, of all places, saying that the city council shouldn't approve it.
I wonder if this is going to open the door to many more lawsuits all across the country, which could really bog down the rollout of 5G, because if the FCC, I know what the FCC was trying to do, they want to speed the rollout of this, and they want to preempt local planning regulations. So, the carriers like AT&T, Verizon can come into communities and say, look, we're here. The FCC says you can't stop us, and we're going to start building this stuff. Now, with this judge's ruling, and obviously I think the FCC and the carriers are going to file amicus briefs against it. They're going to, go searching for another, an appeals court and maybe take this, or they might just take it right to the Supreme Court and have the court hear it in October when their next term starts, because this is something that they could say, they would obviously, I think the FCC could contend, well, this is going to become a national security issue if we can't develop this issue.
Yeah, and it's funny you should mention that. Yesterday at a luncheon I attended that the Monterey County Business Council put on, Admiral Rundow, who is she's the president of the Naval Postgraduate School, retired Navy Vice Admiral. She was speaking to that fact, talking about all the things that the Naval Postgraduate School does in terms of technology and supporting the local community. And somebody brought up the issue of 5G, and would the impediment to implementing 5G be something that would be dangerous for the country? And she agreed. She said, look, we're competing on an international level with China and Russia and all these other countries who have zero resistance from the public to move these things forward. Now, there's a reason for that, but nevertheless, if they are able to deploy these networks and we don't follow suit, then we're going to be at a significant disadvantage. So in many ways, it is a national security issue, and it's something that if too many protests happen happen might rise up to, the federal level in terms of legislation that would be passed to they supersede any local laws or regulations.
And I'm thinking this is more something that's going to end up in front of the Supreme Court.
At some point, I agree with you. I think there's going to be some need for the courts to finally say what the FCC can and cannot do in terms of regulations and deregulation. And there's been a lot of court fights at different district courts throughout the country, some of which the FCC has won and some of which they've lost. So when that kind of thing happens, it always bubbles up to the Supreme Court to make the final decision. But sometimes it can take years. It can take a long time. And I don't think we can wait that long. I know all the carriers have a very aggressive 5G growth plan. And, in our area, we're going to start seeing pretty good coverage on 5G pretty much throughout the peninsula and the valley within the next, 6 to 12 months. But that's only going to happen if there's, if there's not a lot of litigation that stops these cell sites from being built, because as we've talked about, the existing cell sites aren't good, aren't sufficient. We need more because of the nature of 5G. You need a much denser clustering of cell sites. And, people that argue that it's a health hazard really don't have any sort of proof. It's just kind of so it's like folks that claim certain radio waves affect their brains. Well, there's no proof of that. And there's no proof that wireless transmissions on the spectrum that is used by cell towers and cellular systems have in any way caused any sort of harm to people, even though many people have claimed it. It's never been proven, and I don't think it's an issue.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Really, when you start talking about RFI interference and it being a health risk, you have to have a very large concentrated amount of power, and these cell sites are very low power. It's really not a lot of concentrated power, and it's not the kind of thing like, for example, if you go to a transmitter site, like, for example, if you go up Saddle Road across the street from where you live, on top of Hidden Hills there's a number of towers up there with all manner of services. There are a lot of radio stations, there are cell sites up there, there's two-way communications, there's LPTV. I mean, it's just a panoply of different services up there. And in totality, yes, all the transmitters combined across the entire frequency spectrum that's up there. If you spend a lot of time up there, there could be some possible danger to you, okay? But those sites are very rare, and they tend to be very remote, away from where there's a lot of population for that particular reason.
Exactly.
I'm kind of going along with you that I don't think that the 5G sites are the bogeyman that a lot of people, are saying that they are. I think that there's just a natural kind of a Luddite tendency among a lot of people, and particularly in our community. And if it's new, it must be bad, is kind of the attitude that people take.
Well, and we invited the Admiral to talk on a number of topics around the Naval Postgrad School because the business community really needs the 5G networks to be deployed in order to really take us to the next level in terms of wireless communications and the ability to do some very innovative things with technology. And to be hamstrung by, just a lot of false claims of danger is unfortunate. Yeah. And I hope that in the long run, people realize that it's a good thing. It's we've had cellular service, and this new technology is pretty much using the same spectrum. So it's not anything new really in the grand scheme of things. It's just different. It's a different way of using the same spectrum. So I'm hoping that when the City Council listens to the AT&T reps, they side with the business community and with technology advocates, and don't cave to a bunch of speculation and rumor mongering.
I would agree, and it'll be interesting to see where this all goes. And you can bet that those council meetings are going to be lively.
They always are. When you have these type of topics that come up, it's always an interesting night for the people of City Council and the people sitting out in the audience.
And I can bet that there's going to be a fair number of folks from the peninsula that are going to be, kind of Google mapping on their 4G cell phones a route to Salinas City Hall for when this topic comes up, and they'll be certainly in the audience.
Yeah, it would not surprise me if City Hall is packed full of people who are against it, most of whom come from outside of the area and really won't be impacted by any decision Salinas makes for itself.
Right. Well, I hope that the council will take that into consideration.
Yeah, you and me both, my friend. You and me both.
Stay tuned. All right, Louis. Well, thank you very much for the update on this, and we'll keep an ear on it, so to speak. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys out at the Food and Wine Festival in Old Town Salinas today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being out there. It looks like it's going to be good weather, and it's always great wine and a great way to catch up with your friends and neighbors that you don't see very often because it brings out a lot of folks.
It sure does. All right. Louis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, on the line with us here. Online, it's alvareztg.com, at AlvarezTG, Twitter handle. And Louis, the toll-free number for the I-Team.
Give us a call at 866-78-I-Team. It's 866-784-8326.